A secret society is growing with dark secrets, dark ideas, and dark practices. I believe there's a few Easter eggs in here for you guys, and if you stick around, you may learn a little bit more about the character of these crazy people. Welcome to Chasing a Murderer. We are on Life Beyond the Grave, part 144. This is the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell story, the Doomsday Couple. Before we get started, I would like to ask if you would like, subscribe, or share. Do whatever you can to help as I keep my videos free. I'm not a fan of the memberships. I believe that YouTube should be free. That's what we loved about YouTube. Now I'll do a small recap of where we left off on the last podcast. According to Zalima and a few other people within the group, they believe that Chad is the leader of this 144,000. They are building the city of light and preparing for the doomsday and the return of Jesus Christ. In the same breath, Melanie Gibb is doing a lot of the teaching, and she's learning a lot from Lori Vallow. Most of their interactions, especially Zalima, Alex Cox, with Chad Daybell, is when they're getting a priesthood blessing. This is basically fortune telling for them. And let me tell you, this is some of their favorite things. They almost beg to get these priesthood blessings. Zalima and Alex learned that there's a future where it includes both of them getting married, something they had not seen in the near future. Zalima and Melanie Gibb also say that Chad Daybell has multiple ways in which he uses to look into the future. One, he uses pendulums that he swings back and forth to seek unknown answers. Two, he uses priesthood blessings and then seeks the temple to communicate with the dead or spirits or even God. Three, Chad Daybell uses closet portals to see visions, to get important predictions, to see how many zombies there are in the world. He also gets futuristic visions of what's going to happen within the group. A lot of times he uses these portals to make connection with Lori Vallow spiritually when they're not physically together. According to several witnesses, he also used that portal to figure out who would live and who would die in the near future. One of those people being his own wife, Tammy Daybell. Chad and Lori believed that they were fulfilling a mission given to them from the higher power in heaven. If you read Chad Daybell's books before he meets Lori Vallow, he actually had a little bit of different future. That future involved his family in the end days. At one time, the leaders of this future was Julie Rowe, Chad Daybell, and a different group of people. But now that has changed, and Lori's becoming one of the leaders. Lori Vallow is Chad's best friend and lover, and she has a lot to do with the direction that they're going today. They're combining their futuristic visions, and together they're going to create one of the biggest horror stories ever. Continuing on with this recap, there's going to be thousands of tents. That's what they believe that's going to surround that centerpiece, which that will be Chad and Lori. Lori Vallow's grown very impatient with her lover, Chad Daybell. She's grown impatient with his excuses as to why Tammy is still here on this earth. Why is it that they are not in that house sitting on that very important piece of land in Salem, Idaho? Lori begins her threats through text messages, saying how she can't wait or be alone much longer. This has become much bolder on her behalf, and she's becoming quite demanding. The more irritated Lori becomes, the more people suffer around her. This includes the rankings of her own children, Tyle and JJ. Lori Vallow is frustrated, angry, disappointed, impatient. All of these uncomplimentary words. I believe this is why Tyle is 100% dark. Then you have JJ, who was working towards being a zombie, like his sister, like Tammy. There's a few witnesses attached to this case that claim that JJ is not quite a zombie in this timeline. But according to some of the information we learned in this story, there's a meeting later on that affirms that what they're saying about JJ not being a zombie at this timeline is a lie. It was no secret that JJ was going to die young. This group knew that JJ was going to come back to the earth as Colby's newborn son. Whether or not they ever told this to Colby is unknown. By this part of the timeline, their code words have become quite fluent to them. They understand the deceit that they're using to communicate back and forth in order to keep outsiders from understanding their plans. What does this tell us? Well, this tells us that this group knows that what they're doing is most likely wrong, that people will not agree to it. It's deceitful. And so they understand what they are doing is not okay. Remember this, there are several people within this group that understand that when Charles was shot, there was something not right about that. Police start to get involved, a few people get questioned, and there's several people, including Summer, that refuse to highlight the fact that, Lori Vallow is not thinking clearly, things are not going right, and things seem suspicious. There's a huge opportunity to actually stop any more chaos, at least for temporary, and be more aware, but they choose not to. And like many times before, while the family's taking up for Lori Vallow, Lori is shunning the family. They don't know it yet, some of them. But this is something she's done before in the past, and Summer will admit to that in several interviews. Now, Lori and Chad have had a few arguments by now. And even so, Lori continues to search for wedding rings. When those wedding rings, there's a special material she's looking for, and it's malachite. It's beautiful but toxic natural stone, which is a pale to bright green, and purpose of it being green is most likely due to the copper element in which it's made from. Since the mention of these malachite rings, people following this case have tried to figure out what was its purpose. Well, in the Mormon teachings and in biblical translations, I guess it's in the New Testament that the malachite is described as the 8th cornerstone of the New Jerusalem. It also symbolizes protection and stability in your faith. So, what's its attachment to Zion? The 8th cornerstone in Mormon religion, well, it's said that it's through the historic Nauvoo temple. A cornerstone is a large stone that is laid at the corner of the building foundation. It gives order, strength, and stability to the entire structure. The Lord called the stake of Nauvoo the cornerstone of Zion because of the prophetic revelations and the temple covenants. In Zion, the community of believers would give order, strength for generations to follow. For this purpose, the object of the gathering of these people, or the people of pure heart, is to build a great nation for the Lord. So, for Joseph Smith, he believed that, all of this would reveal the ordinances and of his house, the glories of this kingdom, so that he could teach people the ways of salvation. So what Chad and Lori are doing seems to follow the steps of these great prophet leaders of the Mormon faith, people like Joseph Smith. So it's 1846. In the city of Illinois, the Nauvoo people, built one of these layers, plus the cities, where in the center of that city stood the Nauvoo temple, and it was the house of the Lord. For them, the crowning achievement of all of this was the cornerstone of Zion. Something familiar to Chad and Lori. So likewise, Joseph Smith's mission is to restore the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is their mission. Chad Daybell, Joseph said that the Lord had revealed a plan to him, the plan of salvation, the plan to restore the temple ordinances and blessings. Joseph taught that the saints of this Zion could be sealed together in preparation for the exaltation and the eternal life. Joseph Smith is the one that come up with all the ordinances like the baptism for the dead, which we'll talk about more later. Like Chad Daybell, Joseph sends a message that building the city and the temples, it's not an event. These are missions. And the plans were to continue to build these cities, continue building these temples all over the nation until the Lord returns. The ultimate objective of the gatherers, or the people of Israel, Zion, is to bring blessings of the temple to God's most faithful children. So the more that you build in this city, the more you get from the Lord. According to President Russell Nelson, the harder you work on this building, the more you come to understand, the purpose and what God has to say. I think some of the most dangerous teachings in all this that are creating these little groups like Chad and Lori is the fact that they're teaching that the ordinances will change over time, that every Mormon can receive revelation, get their own messages from God himself. And let me just say that the ongoing revelation that builds on the foundation of the temple revelations, basically it makes Nauvoo, its temple, one of the most sacred places on earth. I felt as if this information was quite important for understanding what their idea of Zion or the City of Light would be, and the purpose of it, and what their goals are. So what we're going to talk about in this part of the timeline is how did Lori compliment Chad and Chad compliment Lori? How did this recipe of disaster come to be? Oftentimes you'll hear Lori's family refer to Lori as a helper, or even her friends, that whatever she got into is very competitive. She was going to make things happen. Lori was good at pushing Chad's books, so she was getting quite a few sales for Chad. Lori is very controlling, dedicated, persistent, obsessive, and she will get things done her way at any cost. Chad seen this when Lori come into his life, that she was great at being a manager, a promoter. Chad was the promoter. He's the one that promoted his authors like Julie Rowe. But now he has Lori Vallow to help him be a promoted star. Chad's entire life was basically just manipulating his wife Tammy to get what he wanted. But he could only get Tammy to be interested in all this up to a certain point. Chad was very good at manipulating the women he needed in his life. Chad has always dreamed of having a partner that was just as interested in his faith as he was. And this is the same for Lori. Someone that really enjoyed the visions, his dreams, had the interest in temple work, the ordinances, predictions, all these things that Tammy really wasn't into. It seemed that Tammy Daybell just wanted to enjoy the simple things in life, and that meant her family, her grandchildren. When Chad met Lori, well, he found out real quick that she was a steam engine plowing her way through the obstacles in his life and hers. But it seems that, in my opinion, that Lori wasn't doing these things for love or for Chad or for God. For me, it also seemed that Lori sees this guy, Chad Daybell, that people follow, that can write her story, make her important to the world. What Chad hasn't quite figured out yet, that anyone that doesn't do exactly as Lori wants it done, well, this is going to be a nightmare for them. You know, she has a history of turning people's lives upside down if you cross her. Lori does whatever she needs to do whenever she needs to do it in order to win. Because Lori is kind of in this new relationship, she hasn't really let that whole 100% of Lori out. So she's struggling to control Chad in that aspect. Lori has a history of being quite violent. But she's not the one that actually does the violence. She sends her brother to do it. And while Chad, he doesn't really have the history of that kind of thing that we know of. Chad was kind of embarrassed and shy of violence. We've seen this through stories with Tammy Daybell, how he manipulated people and threatened them through spiritual threats. We learned that with Lori Vallow as well. After they had a recent fight, he was threatening Lori that she wouldn't have the protection unless she started talking to him, and what she did. Chad was quick to restore all those protective powers coming from the heavens. So Chad has a history to punish people that he loves with his godly powers. But Lori wants Chad to become stronger and more physical. Lori uses her woman control to control Chad. A very toxic relationship from the very start between Lori and Chad. Brandon and Melanie Boudreaux. Melanie Boudreaux, who is Lori Vallow's niece, who is in this group, has very similar steps to her aunt Lori. She's she's in the middle of divorce from her husband Brandon. They have 4 kids together. Since that divorce announcement, Brandon's been trying to pick up the pieces. Melanie absolutely shattered his heart. Guys, please bear with me on the audio for the next few weeks. Really struggling with that. Now, Brandon, he was having a difficult time with the divorce. He didn't want it. But now, Melanie describes Brandon as being more confident. He lost weight. He's been working out more often. Remember where we are in the timeline. We're at the end of August. We're working our way into September, which is next comes October. So, Melanie is wanting to slow down this divorce suddenly after pushing so hard that she didn't want to be with this man. So why in the heck would she want to slow down the divorce proceedings? Well, Brandon has a very nice insurance policy over his head. Brandon knows that there's something strange going on with Lori and his wife, are going to be a strange wife. He knows that Charles was shot. He knows things are definitely off, but I don't think he realizes just how off it is. If Melanie Boudreaux gets a divorce, she'll most likely not be the beneficiary of this life insurance policy. It's speculated, and people really believe that Lori Vallow is 100% the reason for Melanie Boudreaux's stray from her family, from her original beliefs, and her lifestyle. But it's also another example of how Lori likes to control people. It's another example that she will use people to get what she wants, no matter what. Melanie wasn't the one destroying Lori's life. Lori is destroying Melanie's life, Brandon's life, Charles' life, JJ's life, Tylee's life. Melanie was very familiar with what happened with Charles Vallow. She knows how Lori was upset about the insurance policy. I think they're trying to be more careful with Brandon's life insurance policy since Lori didn't get or receive Charles. I think what shocks me the most still is the fact that her family, especially her sister Summer, support Lori's bad actions, how she treats people, how she manipulates people. And we know this through Joseph Ryan, and how she and Alex Cox mentioned out loud to several people and family members that she wanted him DEAD. Even more shocking is they didn't seem to care, that this was coming out of her mouth. And guys, I may have to pause it here. I'm so sorry. There's more I wanted to go into. But I have a sick dog and a lot going on right now. So I have a few appointments I have to make today. So I'm going to end it a little bit early here. If you like my work, please make sure that you like and subscribe. Please look past the audio for now. And make sure, guys, that you share some of our missing girls that we support here on this channel, because many of them have been missing over 5 years now with no answers. Don't forget to share your thoughts below on what you think about Melanie Boudreaux. What do you think happened with her? How was she hooked by Lori? Thank you so much. I'll see you guys soon.